There you go. So that's the only person. Oh, okay.
Okay, leave this here.
Hey, Frank. Hi, Patty.
He said hi.
Hey,
Yeah, how you doing?
good. How you doing?
Alrighty.
I was been on there for 10 minutes. I went downstairs to get my phone so I could call Yolanta and see if she was still asleep. And I come back upstairs and there she is.
I'm on twice.
You're on twice. Okay. And so far we have 2 members of the board. Oh, come on, guys. 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Mr. Tedesco,
Yes.
are you prepared to get this hearing over with in one night?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm counting on you.
All right.
Okay.
Mr. Sestokas,
Yes. Good evening. How are
you
you?
are very poorly lit.
I'm poorly lit. Okay.
Either
you know,
back up or turn off the light behind your head.
Okay. Turn off the light. Yeah. Good. Okay. Good point.
Evening.
Oh, okay. There you go. That's the trick.
Let your camera do the work.
Right. Okay.
Mr. Jones, are you here?
I am.
You are. You're my co-host.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Yolanta, do you remember whether Teresa said she was going to miss this meeting or the one in 2 weeks? I think
I thought it was the one in 2 weeks.
that's what I thought too.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Deputy Mayor Ray, good evening.
Chairman
So-
Sando, good evening to you.
Tilt your camera down. We don't want to look at your toupee. There we go.
Are we on the air?
Not yet. Well, yeah, we're not.
We are recording, Chairman.
The March 25th, 2021 special meeting of the Long Hill Township Planning Board is called to order at 7:02 p.m. Can we all rise for the pledge to the flag?
Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance.
Allegiance to the
Flag, United States of
States of
America,
America and to the republic for
republic
which
stands,
stands
one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with
liberty and
liberty
justice
and
for all.
justice for all.
Mr. Jones, would you please read the notices?
Can do, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Call to order and statement of compliance. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting a copy of the public meeting dates on the municipal bulletin board and websites, by sending a copy to the Echo Sentinel newspaper, and by filing a copy with the municipal clerk. Standard board procedures. Any hearing conducted by the board is a quasi judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision. And decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Meeting cutoff. Announcement of this announcement is made that as a matter of procedure, it is the intention of the planning board not to continue this matter past, quote, Mr. Chairman, 10 a.m. or 10:30?
10 p.m.
10 p.m. at any regular or special meeting of the board unless a motion is passed by the members, then present to extend the meeting to a later specific cutoff time.
Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Ray,
Present.
Committeeman Verleza, Ms. Dill, Mr. Hand, Mr. Malinowski.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. File.
Yep.
Thank you. Mr. Richardson.
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Jones, present. Chairman Sendo.
Present.
Mr. Chairman,
Also-
you do have a quorum. I'd also like to note that our professionals, Ms. Mazar, Yolanta, Ms. Leahy, and Mr. Lanzafama are present. Ms. Kuntz is excused.
Thank you very much. We have nothing on the agenda tonight other than the hearing for New Jersey American Water. The other agenda items were truncated for one reason or another. So you'll have 2 hours and 55 minutes to complete your case. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Tedesco.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Frank Tedesco. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Dilworth Paxson, which is in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. This evening, I am here on behalf of New Jersey American Water to obtain approvals for two different issues, but relatively coincide with one another. One is the issue for the new I always miss the word, Vector truck building that is going to be built. We have plans by the law firm, or excuse me, the architect, Mr. Joseph McKernan, who has presented documents to the board, which he will be reviewing as soon as the board will allow us to continue. We also have with us Mr. Craig Stiers, who is a professional engineer, and he also will be with us in connection with the minor site plan and what other issues could arise or need to be discussed by either the board or its professionals. And the third gentleman is a gentleman also with Stiers, who is a planner who is there to address one of the issues in the hearing will be we need a variance for a side yard setback.
I am going to take a minute to make two announcements. First of all, we have three members of the public, two members of the public plus one member of the fourth estate. And the second announcement I'd like to make is that I know we are all concerned from other applications and just in general about the scope, nature, and timing of the improvements that New Jersey American Water is obligated to make to increase the capacity of the sewer plant. That is not at the subject of this application, and I request that the board members and the public refrain from asking those questions because the answer will always be the same and it'll just delay the hearing. So let's focus on what it is that they intend to do under this application. Yolanda, do you want to swear in the witnesses?
Chairman, would you like for me to swear in our professionals before we get started?
Well, sure.
Okay. Liz, Mike, do you swear that the testimony you're about to give with regard to this application will be the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. And Mr. Tedesco, who do you intend to present first?
Mr. Joseph McKernan. He's the
Mr.
architect.
McCrean. Can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give with regard to this application will be the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
And before you give the board your qualifications, I'm sorry, my phone is falling. Can you please state your name for the record and spell your last name?
Sure. My name is Joseph, Joseph F. McKernan, MC, capital Kernan.
Thank you.
And you are a licensed architect?
Yes, I am a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey and have testified hundreds of times in New Jersey, but I have not had the pleasure of testifying in front of your board.
Another notch in your belt tonight. Does anyone have any objection to qualifying Mr. McKiernan to testify as an expert? Fine, go ahead.
Yep,
Joe, are you ready?
yep, I'm ready, sir, when you are.
Why don't you start with the drawings that your office and yourself presented to the board and walk them through what you have done there and what needs to be done and whether or not there are any issues that you feel to be should be brought up before the board this evening.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you, Frank. There's an existing building that is approximately, I'm sorry, the existing building is 672 square feet and it has a shed on the back, garage for chemical storage of 240 square feet. They are both existing structures on the site that will be fully renovated before the end of this project. What we need to do before we do those renovations is construct a 3,000 square foot, 2-story building for the Vector truck, its related equipment, and a camera truck, which enables the Vector truck to see and make sure that it gets all that it's supposed to discharge. The main building is 3,000 square feet. And then the 2-story portion is a mezzanine at 877 square feet. The height of the building is approximately 33 foot 6 inches. And we have also, through application, applied for a temporary trailer. This temporary trailer was installed in October. And we got a full permit for the handicap ramp and access to that trailer, and it is temporary for offices until we can get back into the existing building and renovate it for these people that are going to be in the trailer. We anticipate that the project could take as much as 18 months because it has to be staged.
Okay. Moving along from there, what other issues?
Not architecturally. There one from Camp to KC Keller Inc. They brought up the issue of a handicap ramp, and it was fully approved and submitted for construction permit.
You've said twice now that ramp was approved. Approved by whom and when?
The building inspector?
So that trailer was installed under a construction permit by the construction official
Yes, it was.
in October.
Correct.
Mike, do you have any other questions?
No, that answers the one question I had. I don't know if well, maybe I do have one. You show a number of trench drains in the floor of the building?
Yes.
And what is the purpose of those and where are they drained to?
The purpose of those is in case the vehicle comes in wet from snow, rain, whatever, that the drippings are captured and they will go into the sewer system. And we will also have an oily water separator to protect the water going into the system.
So the trucks are not washed down or the effluent that they vacuum up is not discharged in here, correct?
I do not believe so, but I would have to defer that to the water company. We've done dozens of these facilities for American Water all over the country, and we've never had that issue come up.
Okay. Because there were no utilities shown to the building. I was just curious as to, you show a laundry room, you show a number of toilets. So I'm assuming there'll be sewer, water, electric, gas. I would assume it's heated. It's a heated building.
Yes.
I assume all of those utilities are readily accessible on site and can be accommodated for the building.
Yes, they will all be forthcoming, and we are attempting to add gas to heat and cool both buildings.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Ms. Lehaney, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just would like to clarify. So it'll house two trucks, the Vector truck and the camera truck.
That is correct.
And where are they stored currently? Do you not have them on site or?
No, they are not on site. The Vector truck has water in it, and it cannot be frozen. So therefore, we need a heated structure to house the vehicle. The camera truck could go anywhere. Both of those vehicles, I believe, are stored at Short Hills facilities right now, but that facility is extremely overcrowded, and i.e., this would also better serve the residents of Long Hill Township if the Vector truck was there in case of an emergency.
Okay, and then the other question I had in my letter had to do with the floor area. I know you noted in your application it was going to increase by 1,828 square feet. And I know obviously floor area doesn't include garage space, but so I'm just wondering how the 1828 was arrived at.
1828. I think I would have to defer that to Mr. Stiers.
Okay, that's fine. And then the final question I think I have for you is when I was looking at the architectural elevations, I know that there's a door with stairs kind of coming out the south side of the proposed building. And I think there's a door with stairs and a ramp coming out the east side of the building, right? But it looked like there was a railing coming out the north elevation. And I know there's no door on the north elevation. So I was just curious if I'm reading them wrong, or if I just wanted to know what that railing was.
Okay, I can't answer that without looking at the drawings. Do you want to see the drawing per se? We can put that up on the screen.
That would be helpful, yes.
If you give us the ability to share.
All panelists can share screen. If you go down to the bottom of your screen, yeah.
Okay, the bottom first floor plan shows the concrete ramp allowing access for the two vehicles and also deliveries for their needs. The Vector truck is the long truck on the bottom of the elevation. The small, basically it's a box truck, 20-foot box truck, is on the top. The railing that I believe you're talking about is up there. Okay, it is up there, and because of the elevation, change. By code, we need the railing.
So I'm sorry, because what is it? I mean, that's the entrance for the truck. So what is the railing doing?
Well, that flat spot,
Yeah,
okay, is approximately 2.5 to 3 feet above grade.
okay.
Okay, so anything above 24 inches requires guardrails.
Okay, can you just go to the elevations? Just I want to, just if you can explain it, looking at the elevation. So, okay, that's a good one, on the top one. So it's coming out there, and that, so it's really sort of more on the south side of the building?
That is correct. It's
I mean,
visible
not
on
the
both.
south side, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, I meant the north side. Okay, okay. All right, thank you.
I am confused by the ground level of those big doors.
And there is a 5-foot flat spot right in front of the doors, and the rest is a ramp that will get us to the existing grade.
Okay, thank you. That's probably shown on the site plan. We'll get to that. Anything else, Liz?
No, that's it, thank you.
Any member of the board with questions? You talked about the existing building. Are you talking about the building that includes the foreman's office and the generator and the lab?
Yes, sir.
And you're telling me that that building is now emptied in favor of the trailer?
No, there are still some people in there. The lab is in there, and there's not a full-time employee in that lab, but it is occasionally manned and to provide tests for the facility.
And you're going to,
The
you're going to
office is,
rehab that building before the trailer is removed?
we're going to rehab that building before the trailer is removed, and it cannot be completed until this building is, because the locker rooms for the current employees are being relocated to the mezzanine level of the new facility.
Ah. Thank you. Anyone have any other questions for the architect? Does any member of the public have a question? Yes, I see one. Mr. CA.
Yes, Charles Arenowitz, Millington. It's my understanding that this expansion will house 2 trucks. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Are they going to be exclusively used for Long Hill Township?
I do not believe so, but Victor Sestokis, who's on the line for the water company, might be able to better answer that, but I do not believe that is going to be exclusive. Those trucks are, one truck can handle multiple townships.
So we're going to be housing trucks there that are going to service other towns. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So of the 2 trucks, how much of the truck time is going to be used for Long Hill Township?
That all depends upon the need. That is a difficult question to answer.
What's your estimate of use of the 2 trucks for Long Hill Township?
I would have to defer that one to the water company.
So, Mr. Chairman, how do I get that answered?
Say again, Chuck.
How do I get that answered if this?
Well, there will be a representative of the water company management later on as one of the experts, and you can ask him. This is an operational question, not an architectural question.
Okay. Is there an existing locker room at this facility?
There is an existing locker room for men and women at the existing facility.
Why do you want to relocate that?
Because we want to add some offices in the existing building to house the staff properly, the supervisor and his 2 assistants, as well as the lab person.
Is this expansion in a designated flood zone?
I believe so, but then Mr. Stiers will be better able to answer that question.
Is there any contamination where the building is to be located, like asbestos?
None. There's no asbestos over the existing filter basins.
And you've got documentation that indicates that?
I do not have any documentation, but I have done asbestos work for 30 years, and I do not believe there's any asbestos there. If you would like, and the water company permits, we could have it tested.
Because we've had expansions there at that facility where we had major problems with asbestos.
Okay, we will get any soil that is to be removed or displaced, test it.
Now, this is being built approximately over the foundation of some old settling pits.
That is correct.
Is it going to reuse that structure, or is that structure going to be demolished?
Portions of it will need to be demolished, especially along the north side. We will need to take the existing filter basin down a couple feet to allow us to put pilings on either side. But yes, it is going to be integral into the foundation of the new building.
Will this construction impede any future expansion of the plant capacity, like the required facilities to handle phosphorus?
That would have to be answered by the water company. I do know that there's studies underway that are looking at the expansion of this facility, and that was all considered prior to us locating the building here.
So does that mean that this will not impede any expansion of the plant?
I can't answer that directly. I am an architect, not an engineer. I do not design sewer plants.
Mr. Sandow, there's got to be a lot more questions answered. Thank you very much.
Any member of the board have additional questions? Otherwise, we'll turn it back over to Mr. Tedesco.
Our next witness will be Craig Stiers.
Okay, Mr. Stiers, you please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give with regard to this application will be the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name for the record and spell your last name.
Craig Stiers, S-T-I-R-E-S.
Thank you.
And you are testifying as in what capacity?
I'm a professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, and I oversaw the preparation of the site plan for the location of the new garage.
Have you ever testified in Long Hill?
Yes, I have.
Oh, good.
I have testified before this board twice for a couple minor subdivisions, one a couple years ago and one about 6 or 7 years ago.
And your firm is located?
Stiers Associates, and we are in 43 West High Street in Somerville.
Thank you. Any member of the board want to hear any more about his qualifications? All right. You're on.
Would you, this is Frank Tedesco. Would you enunciate for the members of the public and of course the board what how the minor site plan is operational, and give them the points as to how this will enhance the situation at the property?
Sure. Just get this down here. That's not it. Okay, the site is known as block.
Would you either put up a useful drawing or take down that screen?
Can you see that screen?
What we are seeing, the Zoom. Welcome to Zoom. You need a screen.
Okay, I have on my, let's see.
We see the Gartner report, the Magic Quadrant.
I have on my screen it's the survey, and now it's the cover sheet.
No, you are broadcasting an ad for Zoom.
You need to
Maybe you
click,
should.
you have several windows open. You need to highlight the window you want to show in the share screen app.
Let me start over again. How about now?
There you go.
Oh, that's better. No, Yeah.
Sorry about that.
yeah,
Nice
good.
job.
All right, this is what you see here, hopefully, is the cover sheet of our plans.
Got
And
it.
I'll scroll down. So this is the existing conditions. So now I'll get started. Now we got it cleared up. The existing site's known as block 10411, lot 6.02. While the address is technically 1227 Valley Road, it's actually located at the southern end of Warren Avenue. And Warren Avenue's intersects Valley Road right at Jaeger Lumber. So Warren Avenue goes down, and what was formerly known, or I guess is really the plant itself, as well as the Long Hill Municipal Yard. Last
Stop for
year-
a moment and note that Ms. Dill has joined us at 7:30.
Okay.
No,
The lot was created last year through a minor subdivision that the township did to separate the Long Hill Sewer Treatment Plant from the Public Works. After such time that New Jersey American Water purchased the property, and consists of 6.5 acres. Site's in the public use zone. And obviously the site contains the Long Hill Sewer Treatment Plant and associated treatment structures, tanks, as well as the administrative building that was previously discussed. There's a small parking lot on the east side of the building in this location here. And there's also a stone lot or stone drive that circulates through the site, basically through and around some of the facilities, and able to access the various tanks and what have you. And on the southern end is the Passaic River. And as mentioned before, the site is within the flood hazard area. The entire plant is within the flood hazard area. The limits are actually up into the public works area. And there's also wetlands associated with the Passaic River and associated buffers. The flood hazard area elevation on the property is approximately 213.5. And again, like Joe said in his testimony, what New Jersey American Water is looking to do is to construct a 40 by 70 garage in this location right here. And if I go back up and go to the existing survey again, you will see that there's an existing foundation in that same location. So this was what we can tell, a former settling basins or ponds, but the foundation is still there. And what we are looking to do is to construct a building in that same location. And what that gives us the ability to do is maintain or minimal displacement of the flood hazard area. And in fact, what we've done is we've actually filed a general permit with the NJDP to allow us to construct this building trying to utilize as much of the existing foundation as we can. And as I said, we are within the limits of that general permit, which was issued and we have in hand. We have also submitted an application for a wetlands permit. I can show you that we have delineated the wetlands in this location, and it does go pretty much all the way around the outside of the plant itself. And there, what we consider a 150-foot buffer, which is in this location here. And as you can see, a small amount of the work technically is within the 150-foot wetland buffer. So we have filed for a general permit to allow us to do this particular construction within the limits of the wetland area. And although it's delineated as a wetland area or a wetland buffer, everything pretty much within the limits of the that stone loop drive, as well as the tanks are obviously previously actively disturbed. In fact, there's gravel areas that are in front of the proposed garage. The area where the driveway is a maintained lawn area. But like I said, it's just minimal displacement in order to get the access into the truck area. The finished floor of the garage is going to be at elevation 215, which is 18 inches above the finished floor or the flood hazard area elevation. So the building will be out of and above the flood zone. And I think Joe also discussed the temporary trailer. The trailer is located in the parking lot right now in this location. And once all these, the application's approved and the garage is constructed, ultimately that trailer would be removed once the renovations are completed. Other than that, I mean, that's pretty straightforward as far as the site plan itself. So if there's any questions regarding the site plan, be glad to answer them.
Mr. Lanzafama?
Mr. Stiers, I have a few questions. First, why this particular location in light of the fact that you need a variance for the side yard setback? What was the purpose of placing it at this location? What other site constraints did you have that caused you to locate it in this particular location?
Well, again, the entire site is in the flood hazard area. So if we were to move this building to an open area, then we would have to create some other compensation for the displacement of the flood hazard area. So with the existing foundation, utilizing the existing foundation, we're really we're permitted to increase the size by 750 square feet under the general permit. So that's the reason for the location of the building, essentially trying to use the existing foundation, which was currently in that location. And so technically speaking, that 4.48 feet off the sideline is to the existing foundation.
Understood. Thank you. Now, the permit, you mentioned the 750, that's a permit by certification,
Yes,
and you've already received that?
yes.
Okay, great.
Go
ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, go ahead. Tell me about your permit by certification.
Well, I was going to say, if the application's approved, we will, submit that as, as part of the documents. If there's any changes to the plans and just so you have it on record.
Very good. Thank you. A couple of questions about the utilities that I raised with the architect. Let's start with the diesel supply line that's indicated as existing between the two buildings. It traverses right under the proposed building. Is that diesel supply line located accurately? And if it is, how do you plan on working around that?
What we've done, we utilize some older plans from the plan itself to kind of try to begin to show the utilities. Subsequent to the plans being prepared and submitted to the township for this meeting, American Water has had the geotech go out not only for, obviously burying capacity for the building, but at the same time to investigate the specific locations of the utilities in and around the proposed footing or foundations. So we do have much better locations, which we will, again, if the plan, the application is approved, we would update the plans and show what we have found to date. It is my understanding that diesel line is no longer active. So again, we kind of worked our way from older plans as well as our field survey to try and get these as accurately as we could.
Yeah, because I just questioned the location because it goes through that much older structure and whether or not it was even in that proper location. But yes, any as a condition of approval, I would ask that you submit an amended site plan indicating the accurate location of all the existing utilities, as well as how you're going to connect the building to those utilities and whether or not there's going to be any need to cross into the Public Works property.
Okay, yeah. Based on what we found, I don't think we need to get into the Public Works property, but again, we will coordinate that accordingly with your office.
Perfect, thank you. You also show a bollard detail. I was just curious as to where you're proposing some bollards to be placed.
Let me see if I can switch. Can you see this?
That's the architectural plan. I see
Right.
it on the architectural plan. Yep,
So
I see it.
if you see, there's a
Yep.
bollard on either side of the garage doors.
I got you.
So we will add those to our plans to coordinate between the two plans.
All right, perfect. Now, you show a handicap ramp into the building. You also show a handicap ramp up into the temporary trailer, but I don't see any handicap dedicated spaces anywhere.
We can update the plan again. I think, we'll probably obviously show it in the location of the parking lot. And then once the trailer is out of there, then obviously they would paint the appropriate striping for that.
Because right now, those parking spaces would not be accessible with the temporary trailer there.
That's correct.
Okay. So this is and you're anticipating the trailer is going to be there for about 18 months?
Yes, I believe that's what Joe said.
Okay. All right. Is there any lighting proposed around the building? Will there be security lighting, I assume? And so where is that to be?
I don't believe so, but
Yeah, you, as a condition of any approval, I would think you may want to show us some locations of lights, whether that code requirement. I got to believe that the handicap ramp and the staircase require illumination. So whatever's required by code, I would ask that the architect add that to his plans as well.
Okay, not a problem.
All right. I think that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Liz?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you just go through how the trucks would circulate into the site and get to the building?
The intention would be that, let me back up a little bit, that they would come through the Public Works yard and come into the driveway in this location here,
Okay,
and then obviously pass it and then back into the building itself.
okay, I got it.
And
All
then,
right.
and then most likely circulate around the driveway and then back out.
Okay, okay. And then there was another question I had for the architect about the floor area and how it was calculated for in the application. And he sort of deferred to you. Do you have that information?
Yeah, and basically, like you said, we took the garage area out of the remaining building.
Okay.
And that's how we came up with the floor area ratio.
So the 1828, is that just the mezzanine?
I believe it's the mezzanine, and there is some space in the back of the building on the first floor.
The ground floor. Okay, that's fine.
Yep.
Okay. And just one last question. Is this area, you said it's in a flood hazard area. Is it a special flood hazard area or special flood zone as like defined by DEP? And the reason I ask is because in the Long Hill ordinance, that would be considered a critical area. And you would need a variance to put a accessory structure in that area.
I don't believe it's in a special flood hazard. I'm not quite sure of that.
Okay. All right, let me just see something. Yeah, a special flood hazard. Yeah, okay, all right, let me see if I can get a little bit more clarification on it and ask a
Okay.
yeah. That's it. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Richardson, I'd love to hear your questions. Turn your mic on.
One of my questions stems from, again, the fill that might be brought in to construct that ramp. Is there a calculated fill? Are you using fill on site? What's the plan to raise the grade of the structure?
I would expect that to be all stone and pavement.
Underneath the ramp?
Yes,
Okay. And that would be just regular quarry process stone, or
correct.
like a compactable stone?
Yes.
Is that what? Okay.
Yes.
I
Yep.
didn't see, and maybe I missed it, was there a geotechnical engineering report submitted as part of this application?
I don't believe it was submitted as part of the application, but it has been ongoing since we have submitted the plans.
Okay. And so maybe you could just outline what studies have been done with regards to just the, you alluded to it, some geotechnical work. If you could just summarize the geotechnical work that's been completed to date.
Well, our company did not specifically do it, but it was basically a number of test borings in the location of the proposed building to determine the bearing capacity of the soils beneath, as well as trying to utilize the existing foundation. So there was some analysis of the existing foundation as well. And then while they were there, they did do some ground penetrating radar in order to determine the specific locations of the existing underground utilities.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. And then, oh, just one last final question, and then I'll defer back to the chairman. The environmental and ecological study, that was done by another organization, not under your oversight. That was a separate professional that was brought in?
Yes, for the wetlands, that
Yes.
was Eastern States Environmental. So he did do the reporting. We coordinated with him as far as just making the wetlands map, but he did the reporting and the submission, and he's doing the, I guess, coordination with the DEP as far as the review.
Gotcha. And to your knowledge, are they going to provide testimony this evening?
No, Ed's not available tonight.
Okay. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other members of the board have questions? Raise your hand. All right, then I'll ask questions. Mr. Stiers, are you at all conversant with the design of sewer plants?
I am not.
Okay. So you're not prepared to opine on the age of that settling basin that we are covering up?
Not specifically, no.
Okay. I am told that, and this is all hearsay, but it's a question. I am told that the settling basin was part of the original plant, which would date it in the 1930s. And you don't know how deep those pits are that are currently filled in?
They're approximately 9 feet. That was part of the geotech investigation to see if they can find the bottom of the actual bottom of the pits.
Are you going to be pouring a slab over the pits as they now exist?
I will leave that for Joe. I believe we're currently in the process of, or he's in the process of developing the specific design for the, the adjustments of the foundation and the footings and, this, I would presume that it would be a slab over top. Yes.
So you're not going to disturb in a significant way the existing pits or the 9-foot holes filled with gravel that are there now?
Correct.
I'm asking these questions because if it is true that those pits date to the 1930s, then that would predate the existence of asbestos fill problems in the town. And that may be of some interest when Mr. Arendowitz gets to ask his questions. Any other questions from board members? Otherwise, I'll open it to the public. And once again, I see Mr. Arendowitz's hand.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Is there any way we can go back to Mr. Kernan just to get an answer to your question with regards to how they were going to construct it over those pits, the foundation?
Yeah, would you repeat your answer, please?
Do you want to talk to the architect, right?
Yeah, that's right. The architect.
The current intent for the slab of the new proposed facility is going to be a structurally independent slab because of the potential differential aspects of using 3/4 of the existing edge of the foundation and the other being new. We are anticipating that we're going to be using some sort of pile system. That is all in the process of being determined at this time.
Yeah, and do you have plans to dig down into those pits?
We most likely will be removing them completely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Removing
right,
what is in the pits, not the foundation. We're going to keep that as any disturbance be as minimal as possible.
So you might remove the stone that is currently in the pits.
That is correct.
That's a lot of fill if it's 9 feet deep.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any other? Let's go to Mr. Arendowitz.
Yes, Charles Arenowitz, Millington. Mr. Stiers, in your studies of this area of the prior flooding in the particular location of the building, what has been the level of water there?
We did not study the buildings themselves. What we did was we took the flood study elevation from the DEP.
Okay, you're proposing to raise this foundation 18 inches. There's been 2 other buildings approved within proximity of this location that they have required a 36-inch flow through building. And I won't get into details on those 2 buildings, but they're within a half a mile of this location. Would you be opposed to raising this building from 18 inches to 36 inches?
Well, again, that would affect the driveway coming into the building as well. So there'd be additional fill required in order to get up into that building.
So my question is, would you oppose it or support if the town required you to raise this to 36 inches?
Well, typically the elevation of the buildings are to be at least 1 foot above the flood hazard elevation, and we're 18 inches above it.
But you have done no studies to what the flood area has in terms of height in this area. Is that correct?
No, we did not, and we're not required to.
I'm not saying it's required. I'm asking if you did it.
No.
That's correct. Thank you for your answer. So you would not be opposed to a requirement by this board to raise this to 36 inches.
I would be opposed to it because we're adding additional fill into the site that is most likely unnecessary.
And have you gotten approval from the DEP for this fill?
We have a general permit for the proposed building, yes.
Fine. You have a general permit. Has it been approved?
Yes.
Have you submitted that with your application?
Yes.
Great. You referred to a wetland permit being submitted. Is that correct?
Yes.
What is the status of that wetland permit?
My understanding that it's been submitted and pending review.
When do you project that that will be completed?
That is impossible to answer. There is no deadline for a wetlands permit review.
With all your years of experience, what would it be?
My experience has been from 6 months, and I currently have an application in that's been in for 2 years.
So you
I
project 2
can't
years
answer
for this?
that. What's that?
Would you project 2 years for this approval?
I cannot answer that.
I'm asking you what you would project. That's an estimate. That's not anything you'd be held accountable to.
Well, I can't estimate because of the current conditions. If it were a normal, without the pandemic, possibly 6 months.
All
But
right,
because
so
of the,
if it takes 6 months or 2 years, would that impede or delay your construction?
potentially. Obviously, they want to get started as soon as possible, but we have to wait for that permit to be issued.
Would you supply to this board the approval of this wetlands permit when it occurs, whether it's 6 months, 2 years, or 10 years?
Yes, I believe that would be a condition of the approval and typically what we do.
Oh, that'd be great for you. Thank you very much for your responses tonight.
You're welcome.
Mr. Stires, I'm looking at the site plan that you have on the screen right now. And if I am reading this correct, and stop me if I'm wrong, the finished floor elevation of the existing building is 215.07, and the elevation of the new building is 215.40, which suggests to me that the new building's floor is a couple of inches higher than the existing building's floor. Am I reading that correctly?
You're reading the existing building correctly, yes. The proposed elevation is 215.00. I think you might be looking at the top of the concrete for the foundation right here
Ah, yes, okay,
is 213.4.
thank you.
You're welcome.
So based on .07 difference in the elevation, that's about an inch.
Yep.
This building's floor is about the same height as the existing building's floor.
Correct.
Any member of the board who's been around town long enough know whether the existing building has ever flooded out? I know that there's been water in the driveway, but I don't believe the building has ever taken water.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant's engineer had indicated that they've established the flood hazard design elevation at 213.5. I assume, Mr. Stires, I don't want to put words in your mouth, that was taken from the FEMA mapping, and you added a foot to that as required by the DEP, and that's how you determined what the flood hazard design elevation was. So there's a buffer built into that, the addition of 1 foot, plus on top of that, the permit by certification requires that the building be set 1 foot above that elevation. So there's basically, you're talking about 2 feet of freeboard or buffer put into the overall approval process. And Mr. Stires raised it up another 6 inches besides. So I don't, to respond to the neighbor's comments, I don't think it's necessary to elevate it another 36 inches or 36 inches total. I think the DEP's regulations are to keep the fill to a minimum. And by doing what is proposed on this plan, we are doing that. And the DEP's permit by certification, as Mr. Sires said, has already been issued. So I don't see any real concerns from a stormwater management or flood hazard issue with regard to this. And Liz's comment with regard to the development within critical areas, it talks about no principal building, accessory building, parking areas, pools, tennis courts, patios, or decks shall be located in whole or in part within a critical area. And to say that this would not be permitted in this area, I don't think that's what this ordinance was speaking to. And there are exemptions for that where the disturbance is less than 1,500 square feet. Mr. Steyer said under this permit by certification, they were adding only 750 square feet. So I think we're okay with regard to the floodplain issues and the flood damage prevention sections of our ordinance.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Lanzafera. I have another question, and that brings up an earlier question about emptying the truck. When the town's vacuum truck goes out to clean the stormwater manholes, they bring up all kinds of twigs and leaves and matter of that sort. And when they sweep the streets, I'll get it right, they also pick up leaves, branches, stones, road debris. All that goes into the street sweeper or the vacuum truck that they use, and they haul that to a landfill somewhere up north. I don't know. I may even be out of the county. It's not a sanitary landfill. It's just a dry garbage landfill. Now you're going to be using your vacuum truck to clean out sewer manholes and sewer pipes, sewer trunk lines. You're going to bring that back here, and you're not going to dump that into the storm sewer. So where are you going to dump that and how?
I would, as far as my answer, I would leave that to Vic, because I'd most likely be part of the operations answers.
You have not provided any, you got floor drains for snow drippings, but you haven't provided any sanitary piping into the sanitary system to drain the truck. Question mark.
Again, that was part of the subsequent determination of where the utilities are. You can see there's a manhole, a manhole, a manhole. They're actually connected together. And then obviously since it's within the plant, flow, as part of the operations of the plant. So the discharge from the building would most likely be connected into either the pipe in this location or in the driveway right here.
Mr. Tedesco, will we get an answer to that question later on?
I do not believe so. I apologize. I was not aware of that issue.
All right. Are we finished with the engineer? Yes, I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead.
I just have one more question. Mr. McKinney, I believe you testified that this building might be built on piles, would have to be driven. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, the building is anticipated for the point loads to definitely be on piles.
All right, so how would that work? Would you have to remove the existing foundations down to 9 feet and then bring fill in and drive the piles through the fill?
I'm having trouble hearing you, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay, I just wanted to know how, would you have to remove the existing foundations, bring in 9 feet of fill, and then drive piles through it, or how would that work?
It depends upon the location. We might straddle the north wall with pilings on either side. And then if there's one point load in the existing, within the existing filter basins, and that would be, we would break the bottom of the slab and to drive the pile.
All right, so basically you're saying then the geotechnical reports have indicated that piles are probably going to be required for this building because of where
Yes.
it sits?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Arendowitz has his hand raised again. Do you have any other questions, Chuck, or is your hand by mistake?
Based on the prior questions from the engineer, my question was, has the study been done on the level of water when there's been a flood? And I know you're raising the building 18 inches, but if the flooding waters have exceeded the 18 inches, we need to know that before this gets approved. So I'm going to ask Mr. Stiers that they do a study to see if the floodwaters have exceeded 18 inches at this location.
No,
You said you didn't do the study.
correct.
I'm suggesting, Mr. Chairman, that prior to your approval, that you get a report that indicates what the water level has been during flooding at this location.
I think Mr. Lanzafama pretty well explained that a few
Well, he
minutes
didn't
ago.
really, because there's been no study done, and we have two locations where we've required a height of 36-inch flood through, and I'll identify the properties if you like, but I'm sure you're well aware of them, Mr. Sandow.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
try and respond. The study that was done, sir, was through FEMA and the state of New Jersey. They've established certain mappings that are available to engineers on a routine basis. The FEMA mapping is done by the federal government and has indicated a certain flood elevation. The DEP will accept a FEMA flood elevation if we add 1 foot to the flood elevation established by the FEMA mapping. Then the DEP also requires that any structure be constructed a minimum of 1 foot above that. So we as engineers do not, especially on large rivers like the Passaic River, do not normally do an independent study. We rely on published documentation such as the state of New Jersey's flood study for the Passaic River or the FEMA mapping. The state regulations require that we we utilize the highest of the two. And I believe what Mr. Stiers has testified to is that the FEMA map +1 was the higher elevation and the elevation that he was required to use in determining what the finished floor elevation of the garage should be. Does that help?
No, it doesn't, because
Okay.
we've required 2 buildings to go up 36 inches. So could you respond to that we're in a half a mile this location?
I'd like to respond to that and cut it
Right.
off after that. There are buildings to the east in the vicinity of the Little League ballpark that have higher flow throughs. It is very likely that that is because those buildings are set on lower ground, and when the water comes up higher than it would come up on the ground at this location. We would have to look at the ground elevation and the contours at those buildings to determine why a 3-foot flow through is required. Clearly, the engineering here does not require that under the regulations. And so I think we're trying to compare apples and oranges.
But we still don't know what the elevation of the floodwaters were at this location.
We do know because we have the FEMA contours.
Do you trust them?
It's the federal government. Who else can you trust if you can't trust them?
Well, that's a loaded question.
We all have to giggle at that one, Dennis.
I don't.
In other words, we're not going to second guess the authority of FEMA and suggest that they have done something wrong and that we know better. And in fact, by state law, we cannot require more than the 100-year flood levels. We've heard that testimony before in other cases. Okay, there are no other questions, Mr. Tedesco. What's next?
I think, we've got the issue with respect to the a change. We need a use variance for, I believe it's 4.5 feet. And we have we have Mr. Kaiser, who is a professional planner and is going to give testimony as to whether or not the proposed height is correct.
Yoletta?
Yes, I just want to clarify that that's a bulk variance for a side yard setback, right? Because I thought I heard use. I just wanted to correct the record. Mr. Kaiser, can you please raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give with regard to this application will be the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please state your name for the record and spell your last name.
My name is Robert. Last name is Kaiser, K-I-S-E-R. I'm a licensed professional engineer and also a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. I've been a licensed professional planner since 1983. And I've testified as a planner before numerous boards here in the state.
Mr. Kaiser, it's Frank Tedesco. Would you please explain to the board, I'm sure they've heard it before, but we'll need to put it on the record, what your conclusion is as to the height of variance that they are.
Could we hold that question just for a minute to talk about qualification? Any member of the board have any objection to qualifying Mr. Kaiser as an expert witness?
No objection.
No objections. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Tedesco. Repeat your question.
I'm sorry. I should not have done it, but I thank you for your patience. Go ahead, Mr. Kaiser. Why don't you set forth for the board why you, under your theory, the board should give a variance for this particular project.
And let me just clarify the variance that is being requested. What's being requested is a side yard variance between the proposed garage structure and the northern property line. Currently, the distance between the property line and that existing settling basin is 4.49 feet. And what's proposed is the building will be 1/100th of a foot closer. Instead of 4.49 feet, it'll be 4.48 feet. The 4.49 is pre-existing condition, although the township's requirements are a 10-foot setback in this particular area. Also, I'd like to note that the distance between the existing building and the property line is 4.5 feet, as was reported on the previous subdivision that was provided for this property. Regarding why we qualify for this variance, the MLUL provides for a number of purposes. One is to encourage the appropriate use and development of all lands in the state in a manner which will promote public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. In this particular case, by constructing this building at the location provided, public health and safety and general welfare will be provided to the township. Also, another purpose of the MLUL is to promote establishment of appropriate population densities, concentrations, will contribute to the well-being of purposes, neighborhoods, communities, and regions, and the preservation of the environment. We've heard earlier how we're working to preserve the environment by siting this building in the location over top of the settling basin foundation. And by doing that, we're preserving the environment on this particular property. The third purpose of the MLUL is to provide sufficient space and appropriate locations for a variety of agriculture, residential, commercial, industrial uses in open space, both public and private, in accordance with the respective environmental requirements to meet the needs of the citizens. In this particular case, this is an industrial use. And we also have a coordination between public and private uses here with New Jersey American Water Company purchasing this property that was previously owned by the Township of Long Hill, and the DPW, Department of Public Works yard abutting this property. And I'd also like to point out that the line that is shown here, which is a subdivision line that was previously provided, was determined by the township as to where that line should be. And also the proposed building in the location where it's shown was shown in that prior subdivision. So in terms of the positive criteria, there's a benefit, as I mentioned, by siting the building here and providing for this variance, and to allow the construction of the clarifier over the existing structure, foundation of the structure. And also this building is needed to properly maintain the sewer system in the township, so there's a benefit there as well. In terms of the negative criteria, granting of this request will not be at odds with the existing setbacks along the northern property line. As I indicated, the only difference is 1/100th of a foot closer to the property line than what currently exists between that clarifier foundation and the northern property line. And this distance will not be noticeable. And given the distance away from any homes in this particular location, will not affect any abutting properties. So in consideration of the information that I've just provided, I find that granting the requested variance for the purposes of the MLUL will be advanced, will not be substantial detriment to the public good. In addition, the granting of the variance will not substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and the zoning ordinance, and the deviation in granting this variance substantially outweighs any detriment.
Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. Mr. Chairman, I think that is all.
Well, can you hold off a second? Let's get some questions to Mr. Kaiser. Liz, you want to start?
I don't necessarily have any questions. This is a very minimal increase over what the existing condition is. It's adjoining the DPW yard, and the applicant is quite constrained in where they can locate this building on the property, given the environmental constraints, particularly the wetlands. So, you know, I guess the only question I would ask maybe Mr. Kaiser is, would it be possible to move the building 6 feet south to be compliant?
As was testified earlier to by Mr. Stiers, the building is situated where it is to really minimize the impact to the environment. And due to the permit, the general permit that was obtained, we really need to construct the building on top of the existing foundation. So if we shifted that building 6 foot further to the south, that just would not be workable in this particular case.
Okay, thank you. That's the only question I have.
Mike, do you have any questions?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Board members?
Nope.
Any member of the public have a question for Mr. Kaiser? In that case, I will close the questioning to the public. Do you have any other testimony, Mr. Tedesco?
No, we do not.
All right, then we will close the testimony. And at this point, we will entertain questions from the public. Questions are, I'm sorry, not questions, comments, general comments that you'd like the board to consider. And I remind you that the comments that you'd like us to consider should be based on testimony that we've already heard. This is not an opportunity to introduce new business. Mr. Arendowitz.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I think the fact that this board previously approved 2 sites where you had a 36-inch flow through, irrespective of what the DEP requires, and the fact that there's been no study of what the flood level was in this area. Before you approve this, I think you need to know the level of water during the floods that have come on this location. The second thing I'd like you to consider is there's been no discussion of any contamination that's on this site. In the 1990s, there were multiple attempts to expand this sewer plant. And it ran into a lot of expenditures by the town because of our common contaminant, asbestos. We have no idea what's here and what will incur. So I think you need to find that out before you approve this application. Third, the wetlands submission has not been approved, and I would encourage you to consider, if you approve this, a condition that get approved. Fourthly, I have heard no testimony tonight on whether or not this construction will impede anything that's required for future expansion of this sewer plant. In particular, the requirement of phosphorus contamination removal is required. There will be a building or some requirement of that, and that has not been addressed. Until these 4 issues are addressed, I would recommend that you as a planning board defer until all this information comes forward, and then you effectively evaluate whether or not you should grant approval to this applicant. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Arendowitz. Any other comments from the public? All right, then. At this point, I will ask for a summation by Mr. Tedesco.
Yes, on behalf of New Jersey American Water, obviously the situation in Long Hill provides a excellent opportunity for both Long Hill and surrounding areas to have a more efficient way to handle the water and sewer problems that are located in the area. The individuals and the company has taken a tremendous amount of time and effort to get this thing moving along in a reasonable manner. We appreciate all the time that has been offered to us by the township, and we believe that at this point, this project is for the better good of numerous people, and will help certainly Long Hill and whatever surrounding areas will eventually be tied together by New Jersey American Water. So we would respectfully request that the board seriously consider granting the approvals that we have requested as set forth by the various speakers who are working on the project for the last probably 2 years now.
Thank you. At this point, I'm going to open the discussion to the board members as to the items that you think should be included in the approval or disapproval. And I will start with the first person to raise their hand. Mr. File, you were first.
I suggest that our board attorney list the conditions that I'm sure that she has written those down. So if we could review those first, that might be a better place to start.
I can do that, Chairman, if you'd like me to.
Sure.
If the board approves this application, the conditions that the board might consider is requiring the applicant to update the site plan and resubmit the corrected site plan to indicate the accurate location of the existing utilities and how those utilities are going to be servicing the new building. The applicant should also update the site plan to show the bollards that are shown on the architectural plans, to show that on the site plan. Site plan should also be revised to show the handicap spaces, their location, and their striping. The applicant will also be required to provide lighting that is consistent with the code, and the site plan should be revised to show the location and type of lighting. That lighting should be dark sky compliant. The applicant will also be required, as in all applications and all approvals, to comply with any third-party agencies having jurisdiction over this application. We heard extensive testimony with regard to floodplains and the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. The applicant will have to obtain those permits, comply with those agencies' decisions, and also to provide all of those permits and approvals to the township as they become available. I think the last condition is that the applicant will be required to remove the temporary trailer 30 days after, or within 30 days after construction is complete on the proposed building, in accordance with the township's ordinances.
Would you also add to that the how do we drain the truck when it comes in after pumping out sewer manholes?
I think that's covering utilities, isn't it?
Well, it might be.
Well, the applicant testified that there would be a way to separate the oil from the water. Is that what you're referencing?
No, I'm talking about when they pump out a sewer manhole and the truck comes in looking like a septic tank drainage truck. They've got to put that somewhere, And what he did was he mentioned a couple of manholes, but I'd like to see what the exact drainage system is.
Then we can ask the applicant to revise the site plan and add that to the list of revisions.
Thank you.
I think, Mr. Chair, that was also to include any debris from the side of the road, whether it's car parts that fall off, branches and anything else that comes out of the system that may be collected in the system.
Those are collected in the stormwater system, and that remains the responsibility of Public Works. And they are going to retain their truck, and they'll continue to do what they're doing. This only affects the sanitary sewer system.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. File, back to you.
Just a question for Yolanta. When you said comply with third-party requirements, that specifically includes the approval of the wetland submission, correct?
Correct, from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. So generally what we do is we impose a general condition that requires them to comply with any third-party outside agency that maintains jurisdiction over the property.
Thank you.
And that would also include, Mr. File, if there were to be any type of contamination, even though the testimony was that there isn't, but even if there were, this board doesn't have jurisdiction in that regard, but the applicant would still have to comply during the building phase to any other agency having jurisdiction over that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Just an observation. I thought this was a well documented and well argued application.
Mr. Malinowski, your hand was next.
No, I wanted to touch on the lighting plan. I noticed that there were several lights shown on the existing plan, but Yolanta brought it up and added it as a condition that the lights should be verified that they are what's required for the site.
Mm-hmm.
Any other member of the board have a join in the discussion? Hello. I don't see any hands. I would like to talk about the trailer for just a minute.
Mhm.
The authority for temporary trailers for construction is not in the zoning ordinance. It's in the police powers ordinance, and the responsibility for that is assigned to the construction official. I'm not so sure how far we can go in imposing any conditions on that, other than the conditions that the township has already assigned to the construction official.
You're correct, Chairman, and that condition that I mentioned is right out of the ordinance. That is what the police power ordinance requires. And just like third-party agencies that have jurisdiction over the application, it's informational, and it's almost, it goes without saying that they have to comply with it. So this is more informational than anything else because they must comply with it. So I would include it in the resolution just so that it is complete and that everyone understands what the obligations are.
Thank you. As usual, if it goes without saying, we'll say it anyway.
Absolutely.
Any other remarks before we vote? And the resolution will be to accept and approve this application with the conditions previously stated by our attorney. May I have a motion?
Is that also, sorry, is that also to include the variance that they're requesting?
Yes, so Vice Chairman, so this is an application for site plan approval with the bulk variance for the deviation from the required side yard setback, which is 10 feet. 10 feet is required, and they are proposing 4.5 feet from that side yard setback.
0.48 to be exact.
I'm sorry?
I think it's 4.48 to be exact.
4.48, but I would suggest to the board to, just to make this a little bit easier to grant that 4.5 feet, just in case,
Happy with that.
or even 4. It's just because it's such a tiny minuscule, so
Very
whichever works.
4.5 would not work.
It won't work. Okay, so 4. How
4.4
about
would work.
4?
Or
Okay,
works.
just listed as 4.48, and the construction official will have to use a elastic tape to measure it.
That's exactly.
Okay, Mr. File, is that your motion?
That is my motion.
Second.
Second.
Second by Deputy Mayor Ray. Can we have a roll call, please, Mr. Jones?
Yeah. 1 second, sorry. Committee Member Leza is not here. Ms. Dill?
Vote to confirm it.
That would be a yes.
Yes.
Mr. Han is not here. Mr. Malinowski?
yes,
Mr. Richard? Mr.
Yes.
Richardson, yes, thank you. Deputy Mayor Ray?
Yes.
Mr. File?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Jones votes yes. Chairman Sandow?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I think we are finished, Mr. Tedesco. You know what to do next?
Go home.
Mr.
already home.
Tedesco, I will have a resolution prepared. Mr. Sandow, when did we talk about having this resolution prepared for?
Well, we have a meeting on the 13th, which is almost 3 weeks from now.
Okay, I will have a resolution prepared for that date, and I just realized why 4.5 won't work, the variance. I'm a lawyer, not an engineer. Don't make me do math. That's all I have to say. I'll do the resolution.
You had to pass math sometime, Yolanda.
You went a long way on the scale.
Just a comment. It's a very well argued application. Thank you.
It was.
Thank you very much. We appreciate all your help.
It was nice to see you, Mr. Tedesco, and very nice to see you, Bob Kaiser and Craig Stiers. I haven't seen you in ages.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other remarks? Otherwise, our next meeting of this board is 2 weeks from tonight, April 8th. We have a special meeting that was approved and will be noticed. And the next hearing will be April 13th, and that will be Parisi. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Oops.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night.
good night.
Good night,
Good night.
everyone.
Thank you very much,
Well
everyone.
done. Well done.
That will-